Once the bodies were recovered, the mystery entered a new and more disturbing phase. Investigators needed to determine how 9 experienced hikers could have died on a mountain in the middle of winter. The autopsies revealed that several victims had died from hypothermia, while others had suffered severe traumatic injuries. Some of the injuries were unusual and became a major focus of later theories. Several victims had fractured ribs or skull injuries, while some bodies showed little or no obvious external trauma. At the time, investigators faced an extremely difficult environment. The mountain was covered in deep snow, temperatures were dangerously low, and strong winds could rapidly change the landscape. Snow could bury tracks, alter the appearance of the slope, and make it difficult to reconstruct exactly what had happened during the final hours. The original investigation examined the tent, footprints, clothing, equipment, and locations where the bodies were discovered. The investigators concluded that the hikers had left the tent under circumstances that were not fully explained. The official case conclusion reportedly described the deaths as resulting from an unknown compelling force. But the investigation did not answer the biggest question. What had forced 9 experienced hikers to leave their shelter in the freezing darkness? Over the decades, the case attracted enormous public interest. Researchers, journalists, scientists, and amateur investigators examined the original evidence and proposed new explanations. Some focused on a possible avalanche or snow slab. Others examined katabatic winds, extreme weather, or the possibility that the hikers became disoriented in darkness. More unusual theories suggested military activity or other unexplained events, although these claims have never been conclusively established. Decades later, Russian authorities reopened the investigation. Later scientific analysis focused heavily on whether a small slab avalanche could have damaged the tent and caused the hikers to evacuate suddenly. Computer modeling suggested that such an event was physically possible under certain conditions. But even this explanation remains debated because questions about the hikers' injuries, their movements, and the final location of the bodies have continued to attract discussion. The Dyatlov Pass case has survived for more than 6 decades because the evidence tells us what happened, but not with certainty why it happened. And that uncertainty is what turned a tragic expedition into one of history's most enduring mysteries. More than 6 decades after the Dyatlov Pass incident, there is still no universally accepted explanation for exactly what happened that night. Several theories have been proposed, but it is important to separate evidence from speculation. The avalanche or slab avalanche theory. One of the leading modern explanations is that a small slab avalanche may have occurred near the tent. The theory suggests that snow accumulated above the campsite and later shifted downward, creating enough pressure or danger to make the hikers believe their tent was no longer safe. They may have cut their way out and moved toward the forest, planning to return once the danger had passed. Modern research has shown that a relatively small slab avalanche could potentially occur on terrain like this under certain conditions. However, questions remain about the timing of the avalanche and whether it fully explains all of the evidence. Katabatic winds. Another possibility involves katabatic winds. These powerful downhill winds can develop when cold, dense air moves rapidly down a mountain slope. Such winds can produce extremely dangerous conditions, reduce visibility, and make it difficult for people to remain oriented. If the hikers encountered severe winds during the night, they may have believed that staying near the tent was becoming too dangerous. But again, there is no definitive evidence proving that katabatic winds caused the incident. Hypothermia and disorientation. Hypothermia is another important part of the story. After leaving the tent without adequate clothing, the hikers would have been exposed to extreme cold. As body temperature falls, judgment, coordination, and decision-making can become severely impaired. Some members of the group may have become increasingly confused or exhausted, making it difficult to navigate back to the tent. This could help explain why they failed to return. but it does not completely explain what caused them to leave the tent in the first place. Human factors. Human decision-making may also have played a role. The hikers were experienced, but experience does not make people immune to fear, confusion, exhaustion, or unexpected environmental conditions. A sudden perceived threat could have caused the group to make a rapid decision under extreme stress. Once they were away from the tent, darkness, cold, terrain, and worsening conditions may have made recovery increasingly difficult. Other popular theories, unconfirmed. Over the decades, many other theories have appeared. Some have suggested military activity, an unusual natural phenomenon, an attack, or even other unexplained events. These ideas have attracted enormous public attention, but there is no conclusive evidence establishing them as the cause of the deaths. The key distinction is simple. A theory can be interesting without being proven. The Dyatlov Pass mystery continues because several explanations can account for parts of the evidence, but none has definitively answered every question. And perhaps that is why the case remains so fascinating. The mountain offers clues, but not a complete answer. More than 6 decades have passed since 9 hikers died in the northern Ural Mountains. Today, researchers have access to tools that investigators in 1959 could never have imagined. Modern terrain mapping, computer simulations, historical records, and renewed analysis of the original evidence have allowed scientists to examine the Dyatlov Pass incident from a different perspective. One of the strongest modern explanations focuses on a slab avalanche. Researchers have shown that snow conditions, the slope above the tent, and the way the hikers cut into the mountainside could potentially have created conditions capable of producing a delayed snowslide. This theory could explain why the group suddenly abandoned the tent and moved toward the forest. Other evidence supports the idea that the hikers faced extremely dangerous environmental conditions. The freezing temperatures, strong winds, darkness, and difficult terrain would have made survival increasingly difficult once they were away from their shelter. Hypothermia is also consistent with the deaths of several members of the group, but there are still unanswered questions. Why exactly did the hikers leave the tent? Why were some bodies found at different locations? How should the unusual injuries be interpreted? And what happened during the final minutes inside the tent? Modern research has provided possible explanations, but it has not produced a universally accepted reconstruction of every event. That distinction is important. Some parts of the case are supported by physical evidence. Other parts remain interpretations, and some popular theories have little reliable evidence behind them. So why does the Dyatlov Pass mystery continue to attract attention? Perhaps because it combines tragedy with uncertainty. There was no survivor to tell the story. The evidence is incomplete. The original investigation took place under difficult circumstances, and the remote mountain environment makes the final events incredibly difficult to reconstruct with certainty. Today, the Dyatlov Pass incident is less about finding the most sensational explanation, and more about understanding what the available evidence can actually tell us. We may never know every detail of that final night. But one thing is certain: 9 young people entered the mountains expecting an adventure. They never came home. And decades later, their story continues to remind us how quickly extreme environments can turn dangerous, and how much of history can remain hidden beneath the snow.